Video time. You ask answers and I'll give you questions. I screwed up already. It's gonna be awesome. First question comes from Dan Liberto from Markham, Ontario, home of the Waxers. By the way, new rumor, Stamkos is getting traded back to the Waxers. Anyone outside of Markham's like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is kind of a long one, so I'm gonna read it out. Which asset do you believe is the most important to have on a team? A great goalie, a star player, rookies, seasoned vets, enforcers, or etc. The goal is to eventually win the cup. Well, yeah. I would say a great goalie. I mean, people kind of look at the Blackhawks from a couple years and go, well, you don't need a great goalie to win the cup. No, the Hawks had a great goalie. His name was Antti Niemi. Just because he's not a household name doesn't mean he wasn't great in those playoffs. In fact, he won the first 6 playoff series of his career, only losing in the conference finals this year with San Jose. Boston won with Tim Thomas. There you go. But there always seems to be one team every year that has this seemingly unbeatable goalie that just doesn't make it. He's stopping everything in sight. They make it close, but yeah, they just can't do it. Think J.S. Jaguar in 2003 when he won the Conn Smythe, but the Ducks lost. If I had to think of an example from this past playoffs, it'd be Pekka Rinne. So I guess my answer, Dan, is that you need more than one of those things. I mean, Nathan Horton wasn't great for the Bruins, and he missed almost all of the finals, but he was clutch. Hard to argue with 2 Game 7 series-winning goals, one of them in overtime. Then you got guys like Zdeno Chara, Brad Marchand had an amazing final. I would say the goalie is the most important. That's why you're only allowed to ice one of them at a time, but you gotta have other stuff. This next question comes from my own backyard, Toronto, Ontario, from Alex Holtzman. Do you think Nazem Kadri and or Joel Colborne will make the Leafs the whole season? No to both. None will make the Leafs for the entire season next year, but they'll both get sniffs. I don't know how big of a sniff. Because around Christmas, something like that, they gave Kadri a little sniff, but by the end of the season, it was just full-on deep breaths. The way I see it, let's just pretend the Leafs keep the Kuhlman, Grabowski, MacArthur line together. First line's probably Kessel, Lupul, and one of either Lombardi or Connolly, probably Connolly. That fourth line might be centered by Dupuis, probably have like Brown and Rosehill or Orr on it. Then there's that weird third line that could have Lombardi or Bozak centering it, and then you got Colby Armstrong and I don't know who on the left wing. Now, it could be that you dress both Rosehill and Orr, put them on the fourth line, and bring Brown up to the left on the third. It's a bit more of a natural right. So where does that leave Kadri or Colborne? Colborne's a center through and through. He's not going to get a center spot in this Leafs team this year unless someone goes down, so he's going to be spending the year with the Marlies. Based on what Burke said at the press conference I was at the Leafs prospect camp, Kadri's going to be more of a winger, but the way I see it, the most open spot on the team is third line left wing, and do you really want Kadri third line left wing? Kadri had a really disrupted year last year with the Marlies, up and down, but he was performing at a point-a-game click in the AHL, something that you would eventually like him to do in the NHL. So I say if you need to call someone up, hey, put Kadri near the top of that list, but in the meantime, let him murder the AHL. I've yet to hear a bad thing about Coach Dallas Eakins, so it'd be good for development. Sorry, non-Leaf fans, you can wake up now. I'll talk about something else. Last question comes from Zach Evans from Norfolk, Virginia. He asks, who has had the biggest impact on the Eastern Conference this offseason? Philly, Washington, Florida, or other? Well, that depends on a few people, namely Ilya Bryzgalov and Thomas Vokoun. If Bryzgalov can actually steal the show in Philly, then you take a team that was already pretty strong to begin with, and Philly finally has a goalie that they locked up to an awful contract. But if you win the cup with the guy, then he's worth every penny. As for Thomas Vokoun, I'm not actually 100% sure if he's going to be the starter in Washington or just a mentor for Neuwirth. But if Thomas Vokoun plays as well as Thomas Vokoun can, not only will he be the starter, but Washington will have a goalie, and that's a scary concept too. It's good that the Capitals tried to play with more defense this past season, but they're the most confident when they know they can go up ice with complete freedom and go for a scoring chance. Guy Boucher gave this advice to Steven Stamkos, and it always stuck with me. Work on your strengths 80% of the time and your weaknesses 20%. Your strengths are what make you a special player, and by working on them most of the time, you're bringing them up even further, and you're still working on your weaknesses, so that comes up too. The Washington Capitals' strength is in Alexander Ovechkin, obviously, and the rest of their offense. But those are 2 playoff teams I just talked about. What about Florida? Because if you want to talk about a big impact on the Eastern Conference, well, taking a team that wasn't in the playoffs and potentially bringing them in, that's a change. Now, is Florida good enough to make the playoffs now with all the changes? I think I gotta go back to the goalie again. You can talk about other free agent additions, maybe guys that they traded for, like Brian Campbell, Chris Versteeg, the rest of the Stanley Cup winning Blackhawks. But are you confident you can get to the playoffs with Scott Clemenson and Jose Theodore? I don't know. Because Vezina and Hart-winning Jose Theodore, he's back there somewhere. I haven't seen him for a while. He was good last year. He actually had pretty good numbers as a backup. So I think Washington and Philly were going to be competitive no matter what. The biggest monkey wrench thrown in there is the Florida Panthers, and that's why I think they've had the biggest impact on the East so far. Who knows who it could end up being? The Leafs? End things off, I have a question for you. Tables have turned. I don't care what city you're in, do you go to MLB games? Because something you might not know about me, I love hockey. But in the summer, I gotta like baseball too. I'd say fall, but I haven't seen it there for a while. But whenever Bautista gets up to bat, just test the wind and point to the stands. And I like to think when I do that, I'm the main reason he hits home runs. So let me know what you think of that and all the other topics we discussed. And don't forget to check out stevedangle.com. And if you're already there, hello. Stay a while. I have free pie. I don't have pie, but stay.